In Ostend it gets dark early, especially at the end of November. A cold wind from the sea rattles the old window frames and makes the glass buzz. I'm sitting at the desk by the window, my laptop glowing like a pale rectangle, coffee cooling in the mug. Across the narrow courtyard stands a similar building, just older. The windows face each other almost perfectly, like mirrors. Usually, there are only dark curtains and the occasional yellow slice of light. I've grown used to this view. Sometimes, late at night, I see someone switch on the lights on the third floor across, a figure passing by the window. Just a shadow, nothing special. But that evening, while typing another email, I suddenly felt something press in on the room, like the air got thicker. I lifted my eyes from the screen and, for the first time, really looked at the windows opposite. On the third floor across, in that same window where a shadow sometimes passed, someone was now standing absolutely still. The figure filled the darkness of the frame like a cutout shape. No face, no details. No light in the room, no visible motion. Just something darker than the dark around it. At first I thought it was a coat on a hanger or some kind of decoration. But the longer I stared, the more clearly I understood. This wasn't an object. This was someone, standing there and looking directly at me. I involuntarily pushed my chair back. Outside, drizzle crawled down the glass in thin streams, making the figure waver slightly, as if breathing. But it didn't vanish. I checked the time. 10:37 p.m. I kept repeating in my head. Just a neighbor, just a person. Then why did the room feel so cold all of a sudden, and why did my heartbeat sound so heavy and uneven? I stood up and moved closer to the window, almost pressing against it. My hands rested on the cold sill as I squinted through the raindrops. The figure didn't vanish. Didn't move. It stood there as if its only purpose was to watch me across the courtyard. I turned off the desk lamp. The room grew darker and my reflection disappeared from the glass. Now there was only the outside, wet walls and that one window. The silhouette seemed a little taller than me, with its head held straight and shoulders oddly stiff. I had the uncomfortable sense that its arms were too long, but maybe that was just shadow play. I grabbed my phone, aimed the camera at the window and took a couple of shots. The screen showed only grainy blackness. No silhouette, no window, as if the phone refused to register what my eyes could see. I forced myself back to the laptop. Logic whispered, "You're tired." Eye strain. Reflections. Nothing unusual. I opened a movie and let it run in the background just to have sound. But my gaze still kept slipping to the window every few seconds. The silhouette remained. Sometimes it seemed to lean forward, as if inching closer. But whenever I stared for longer, it flattened again, like a drawing on the glass. At some point I noticed something strange. In the other windows of the opposite building, lights switched on and off, people passed by, moved around. But in that window, never. Only darkness. And the one who stood within it. Around midnight I finally went to bed. I closed the laptop and deliberately avoided looking at the window, afraid to see that the figure was still there. My eyes betrayed me. It hadn't gone anywhere. I yanked the curtain shut, cutting off the view. Breathing grew easier at once. The black hole across the courtyard disappeared from sight. Lying in the dark, I tried to convince myself it was just a person. A neighbor with very strange boundaries. Maybe he couldn't sleep either and was just standing at his window, lost in thought. I fell asleep to the sound of the wind, but woke to a strange noise, subtle, almost inaudible tapping. Like a fingernail drawn along glass. Once. Twice. 3 times. I froze, eyes closed. The sound didn't repeat. When I woke up, the first thing I did was go to the window. Behind the curtain lay the usual gray morning light. Across the courtyard, that particular window was empty. I exhaled and even chuckled. The night's fear felt childish. By day, the yard was completely different. Wet asphalt reflecting light, voices drifting from open windows, someone below walking a dog. On my way to work, I kept repeating to myself, just exhaustion. Just autumn. But somewhere deep beneath that reassurance, a small thought remained. Then who tapped on the glass? The second night, everything started almost the same way. I came home late, around 10. 8. Turned on the laptop. The old fridge hummed in the kitchen, rain brushed the window. I deliberately stayed away from the window until I finished my tasks. But when the room got too quiet, I realized I was already standing by the glass. The window across was dark. For a second I felt relief. Then, from somewhere deep in that room, the silhouette slowly emerged. Like someone taking a step forward, from total blackness into slightly lighter darkness. This time it was closer to the glass. Now I could make out a bit more. The figure was unnaturally straight, almost symmetrical. I couldn't see a face, but around where the head should be the darkness seemed denser, like a mask. Where the eyes should be, it looked a bit lighter, 2 blurry spots. The longer I stared, the stronger my sense that the distance between us wasn't an entire courtyard, but just a couple of meters. A strange thought struck me. If I wave, will it wave back? I raised my hand. The silhouette didn't move. After a second, though, the pale smudges where its eyes should be seemed to brighten slightly. I couldn't stand it and called a friend. Hey, have you ever had the feeling someone's watching you from a window? You're overworked, he laughed. Too much overtime, not enough sleep. No, seriously. Someone's there. Second night in a row. Can you record it? I opened the camera app again and pointed it at the opposite window. On the screen, just a dark rectangle. No silhouette. There's nothing, I said. There's your answer, he replied. Go to bed. Autumn, rain, nerves. I hung up, but I had no intention of sleeping. Around 2 in the morning, I heard that familiar sound. At first it was soft, barely audible, like something brushing the glass. I flinched, then realized. The sound wasn't coming from my window. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass and listened. From the other side of the courtyard, from the opposite window, came a distinct tap. 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 The figure was still there. But now its head was tilted slightly to one side, like someone who finds something particularly interesting. I jerked back, bumping into the edge of the desk. On the third day, I tried to live as usual. Work, groceries, small talk. But every time I looked up at the windows around town, I imagined in many of them someone might also be standing and staring out. In the evening I caught myself slowing down in front of my building, reluctant to go up. When I finally entered the apartment, I turned off the hallway light first, then carefully peeked into my room without switching the lamp on. The familiar cutout silhouette was already there, waiting in the darkness across the courtyard. Tonight it was even closer to the glass. I saw it immediately. There was almost no distance left between the figure and the window. The darkness seemed glued to the pane itself, and a sick realization came, as if only two thin layers of glass and the narrow space of the courtyard separated us, a distance that could be crossed in a few steps. I tried to be rational. I took out an old pair of binoculars I'd inherited from my grandfather. When I focused them on that window, my heart slammed so hard I nearly dropped them. Through the cloudy lenses I saw not a face, but a suggestion of one, like a featureless mask with only the faintest relief. Yet when I shifted the binoculars just slightly, the face slowly turned. Not the whole head, just the area where the eyes should be. It turned as if following the movement of the binoculars. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, the figure was upright again. Around midnight I realized the figure was gone. At some point I looked up, and the window across was empty. The darkness there still seemed thicker than elsewhere, but there was no silhouette. I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. The room suddenly felt too quiet. I decided it was a sign. Enough. Close the curtain. Go to bed. In the morning everything will be different. I'd already taken hold of the curtain when I noticed movement, not where I expected it. Not in the opposite window. In my own reflection. At first I thought the glass showed only my tired, pale face. But behind my reflection, deeper in the room where the door was, a shadow slid by for a second, too tall to be mine. I spun around. The room was empty. Chair, desk, half-open door to the hallway. Shadows from the street lamp lay exactly where they always did. But something in the feeling had changed. It no longer pulled me toward the window. Instead, it felt as if something behind me was gently pushing me toward the glass, as if I stood at the edge of an invisible drop. I looked again at the building across. The window there was truly empty. But in the glass of my own window I saw what I couldn't see directly. Down by the sill, at the level of my shoulders, two bright spots appeared in the reflection, like eyes standing behind me, watching along with me. I sidestepped so fast I nearly tripped. The spots didn't move. They weren't my reflection. Sleep was out of the question. I switched on every light in the apartment, even in the kitchen and bathroom. The curtain in my room was tightly closed, but that only made things worse. Now I couldn't tell where it was. Beyond the glass? Inside? Trapped in the reflection? I walked in circles, poured myself water, forgot to drink it, kept listening for any sound. Several times I thought I heard someone slowly dragging a finger along my bedroom door, but each time I stepped closer, the sound stopped. Near dawn I dozed off on the living room couch. I dreamed of the courtyard, only the buildings were taller and closer, and the windows had no panes. From every opening someone leaned out toward me, but I couldn't see a single face. During the day I decided I couldn't keep going like this. I took photos of the courtyard, the window, my room, and sent them to my friend, along with a long voice message where I tried to explain everything, from the first silhouette to the eyes in the reflection. He replied briefly, "If you feel this bad, see a doctor." Seriously. Stress can do that. I almost agreed. Stress, autumn, loneliness. It all sounded reasonable. But that evening, when I returned home, my phone showed a new system notification. Message not delivered. Recipient unavailable. I dialed my friend's number. An automated voice replied, "This number does not exist." I sat on the edge of the bed and just listened. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I knew I couldn't avoid the window forever. At some point I'd look anyway. Better to do it now than let curiosity slowly eat me alive. I walked up to the curtains and stopped. My fingers trembled, though I kept insisting to myself it was all imagination. With a sharp motion I pulled the curtain aside. The opposite window was once again a black, gaping hole. And in it, it stood again. This time, it was too close to the glass, so close that if there had been even a hint of light, I might have seen facial features. But luckily, or horribly, there was none. Only the two slightly lighter spots where eyes should be. Only now did I notice another detail. At the bottom of the frame, right by the sill, I could see fingers, long, thin, pressed against the glass from the inside. For the first time, it moved in a way I couldn't blame on light or rain. First, the fingers slowly peeled away from the glass. Then the whole figure seemed to straighten even more, if that was even possible. I instinctively stepped back. And then it took a step forward. Of course, physically the distance couldn't change. We were still separated by the courtyard, 2 buildings, double panes of glass. But visually, the figure grew larger, as if someone had subtly turned a zoom wheel on reality itself. My reflection in the glass almost vanished, the dark shape blocked it out. For the first time, I felt clear, direct danger from it. Before, it had been mostly the feeling of being watched, heavy, sticky, but passive. Now something inside screamed, "If you turn away, it will be closer. If you blink, it will already be here." I backed away step by step, not taking my eyes off the window. Reached the doorway, fumbled for the switch. When the light flicked on, the figure disappeared for a moment. My own reflection blocked the view. But then, deep within that reflection, I saw those familiar pale spots again at the level of my shoulders. They weren't in the window anymore. They were in me, perfectly matching my position. It was clear, I couldn't stay here. I hastily packed a backpack, documents, wallet, charger, the essentials. My phone read 3:12 a.m. The night bus to Brussels didn't run often, but I could walk to the station. I tried not to look at the window, but passing by I stole a quick glance. In the glass I saw only myself, pale, dark circles under my eyes. No extra eyes next to me. No shadow behind. I almost calmed down. Almost believed it was over. Out in the hallway, I realized I'd left my keys in the room. Sighing, I went back. The room looked the same as a minute before. Backpack on the bed. Laptop on the desk. Only now the curtains were drawn over the window. I hadn't closed them. I froze in the doorway. The curtains were tightly shut, but a chill came off them, as if behind them there wasn't glass but an open hole into overcooled emptiness. The keys lay on the desk right by the window. I couldn't reach them without coming near the curtains. I took a step. Another. Reached the desk, forcing myself to look only at the keys. But in the corner of my vision I felt it, something behind the curtain leaning forward, mirroring each of my movements. I grabbed the keys. I couldn't resist. My eyes flicked toward the curtain. At that exact moment the edge of the fabric twitched slightly, as if a hand inside brushed along it. I bolted from the room, slammed the door, and turned the key in the lock. The stairwell smelled of damp and old concrete. The ceiling bulb flickered, like in a cliché horror movie, except this was my life. I descended clinging to the railing, constantly feeling that if I looked back, I'd see someone on the landing above, leaning over the banister. But every time I glanced up, there was no one. The front door resisted. Moisture and wind had warped it. Cold air hit my face, smelling of the sea and wet pavement. I stepped outside, walking faster and faster, almost running. Only at the corner did I dare look back at my windows. The room was dark. But behind the drawn curtain, at the level of the glass, an unnatural dark rectangle bulged outward, as if someone inside stood pressed against the window. The station was almost empty at this hour. A couple of students with backpacks, a man in work clothes staring at the floor. The electronic board blinked with a few late-night departures. I bought a ticket for the nearest train, anywhere, as long as it was away. Sitting on a bench, I took out my phone. The photos of the courtyard, the window, my room were still in the gallery. But now, in every shot where the opposite window should have been empty, the pixelated darkness hid a faint yet unmistakable figure. I zoomed in on one. At full magnification, the picture broke into little squares, but among them two were slightly lighter, exactly where the eyes should be. My stomach lurched. A voice over the speakers announced the train would be 20 minutes late. I lifted my head and, through the station's huge glass panels, saw the reflection of the city behind me. There, among all the windows, one was staring too directly. I realized I wasn't seeing my building. That neighborhood was in a different direction. But the window looked the same, a hollow dark rectangle with two faintly brighter points. It wasn't about a specific place. Not one building, not one apartment. This something could stand in any window. The one opposite me, one behind my back, above the station, in the reflection of a shopfront. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Distance didn't matter to it at all. The train finally arrived. I boarded, took a window seat, and forced myself not to look outside. The night scenery outside turned into smeared lines of light and shadow. I turned on the front camera, deciding to record a voice message for myself, a reminder that this had been real, not a dream. My face appeared on the screen, tired and drawn, eyes red. I started speaking. If you're listening to this, it means you got away. And stopped. Behind me, in the reflection of the train's dirty window at the top corner of the screen, appeared a familiar place that couldn't be there, the dark opposite window, just like the one at home. There was already someone standing in it. I slowly turned my head toward the actual train window. Outside there was only the darkness of a tunnel. But in the reflection on the screen, right above my shoulder, two pale spots had aligned with my eyes, as if someone was staring into the screen along with me.